Well, welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, income and expense planning in retirement, part 3 in our series on retiring right with media personality and financial consultant Alex Joyce. Welcome to the segment, Alex.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, this is a big one. And by the way, if you say, Steve, budget, we're talking about budget. What's essential spending? What's discretionary spending? If you say, I've never done a budget in my life, and a lot of my baby boomer brethren haven't done it, if you write me at steve@lifesizesolutions.com, I'll send you a budget, and then you can let Alex test it against their theory of what should be essential and what should be discretionary. We all have to pay bills.
We do.
We're not going to get away with anything here in retirement.
No,
so
sir.
got to pay the utility bill, got to pay insurances for my car, for my house, blah, 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 my long-term care insurance. I still have to pay all that. So how am I going to pay for this? Now, this is what bothers me. I'm a boomer. 2018, the number one complaint all over the net watching our show was, Steve, we still have bills to pay and we had losses.
Yeah.
Now, how can I match that up?
Yeah. That's we talked about this a little bit in our last segment, Steve, and I think that's the most realistic part about understanding what we mentioned about risk, right, and reward, and being paid to take more risk, right? I mean, there's fixed expenses. That's the first thing we have to understand, right? Every family should have a balance sheet. We have to understand the cost to turn the lights on. We have to understand the cost to maintain our cars. We have to understand the cost to maintain our lifestyle, if you would. But then there's this thing called a gap, right, Steve? There's these things that we want to do. These things that we have goals to do. There's these retirement things that we wish that we could do. We all want to fund them, but it's difficult when the market's volatile, right? And it's difficult when the market's down and you're still pulling out 4 or 5%. That's very challenging, if you would. So I think that most people, what they're looking for when they seek advice or when they walk into our office, they meet with us, my team, is they're looking for confidence. They're looking for a way ultimately to be able to do those things, not necessarily, again, being more conservative, maybe taking on the same amount of risk, but providing a lifestyle that they truly, really deserve to have.
Well, let's just take the first one. I have essential spending. I got to do that. I can't get around it. Those are the bills that have to be paid.
Sure.
I need to identify that number.
Yeah.
Now, I do have Social Security coming in for me. If I'm married, my spouse as well.
Sure.
We have that in, and that's guaranteed for life.
Right.
My bills, by the way, are guaranteed for life, okay?
Right.
But I've noticed something, and I'm asking you. I've noticed that most of the Social Security payments, and they're there, I'm glad to have them, but they're not going to be enough for essential spending. Having got to discretionary, it's not really enough. I need to match guaranteed bills with guaranteed income.
Right.
And I don't know if I can do that with mutual funds, ETFs, stock dividends, and bond interest. I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah. Well, what they need to do, and just real fast, and it's funny you say that because I just read that the average Social Security is $17,000 a year, right? Pensions, as you mentioned, are dinosaurs, 3%. Have
Very
those
few.
now. Very
Very
few.
few.
So I think what we like to do is we like to find a way to squeeze that gap in as much as possible with another form of guaranteed income, right? So I think that you look like you had something on your mind.
No, I was just thinking, from a boomer's point of view, which is the bulk of the people, 10,000 a day retired, right?
Yeah.
When I think about it, I have goals. I know I have to pay my bills, but I want to go see the grandkids. I want to go on a church mission trip.
Sure.
Maybe I want to go to a Disney World with my kid. I want to do things priced into my budget, right?
Yeah.
So I know Social Security isn't going to cut this. It's going to be part of it, part of the answer.
Right.
So I don't see too many, and very few people have pensions, so I'm really left with basically reverse mortgages and lifetime annuities.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed that Jean Clement died at 122 years, 164 days. She is the Guinness Book of World Records. But not everybody's going to be that old, okay? Yeah. But to think about age 100, that to me is kind of reality now. That could be reality.
Yeah.
So how can I tether or actually in concert with my Social Security pick up an annuity to kind of go with that and take care of all these?
You can, right? Fixed indexed annuities have an income rider. And you can, a lot of times you can get these at no cost or very little cost, cheaper than buying a actively managed or a passive mutual fund, if you would, less than 1%. And what those things do, Steve, is they provide that withdrawal percentage, again, indexed to the market, where you can over time hedge inflation, if you would, in certain ways in terms of a fixed income position. But they allow to have that income that you can't outlive. They provide that guaranteed lifetime income. They walk and talk just like a pension, right? But indexed to the market, which we believe is a feature everybody should have in their portfolio over time, being above inflation, if you would, being compensated for the risk of doing so. But anyway, what they do is they provide that extra layer of income. They squeeze that gap together, if you will, that gap between your fixed income and the things that you want to do. There's always a bubble in between. And what we're trying to do, our biggest objective, not just our firm, but any advisor, Steve, we're trying, it should be, right? Should be, is we want to fill that gap, right? We're always looking for ways to do so in the most cost efficient way.
Well, let's just make sure we underline a couple things here. There is a gap.
There is a gap.
Social Security's not going to cover it all.
No, sir.
And that's just on the essential spending, not my discretionary grandfather wants to go places, right? So there's my number. I need to find out what that number is. And to do that, I need to do a budget. And again, if you don't have one, I'll send it to you. Just write an email. And keep in mind, and when we're talking about indexing, we talked about never going below zero, but also we do not participate in dividends, whether it's foreign and or domestic indices. So just to make sure we do full disclosure.
Sure.
Now, I have this annuity. I have this money coming in now. I figured out here's my Social Security income, and here's my joint annuity with myself and my spouse.
Sure.
That is taking care of all my essential and discretionary spending. So I partition that money away from there, and now I have money left over that I can do for inflation to grow my account.
Absolutely.
Talk a little bit about, we just talked about the partition. Now I need to talk about inflation because I'm still in the market.
Yeah.
As a boomer.
Right. So that's the other piece, right? So now we're having a three-legged stool, right, Steve? So the other portion is hedging long-term inflation, making sure that we still have the objective of long-term growth, right? Whether that be, because the fact is, Steve, we have clients that even when the market's down, they promise their grandkids, all 5 or 6 or 7 of them, that they're going to go to Disney. You know what's going to happen?
Right.
They're going to go to Disney regardless, right, Steve? So our job, and it makes it even harder for the advisor, the everyday advisor, is our job where they hold us accountable for saying, hey, put that money back in my account. Can't predict the market, right? Don't have a crystal ball. But the goal is to have that three-legged stool where you have that. We know what the fixed income is. Now we're showing a way to fill that gap, right? To fill that gap, and then we have something over here. This next the third leg, if you would, of hedging long-term inflation. Whether that's an equity position, Steve, whether that's an ETF position or an index, or depending on if there needs to be active. Looking at different asset classes is the ultimate way for to gauge diversification. So we look at that. Right? And we make it make sense. We educate our client in terms of why we take this approach, and we put it all together. We put it all together.
And they're taking a risk tolerance test to find out how much they can handle.
They have to.
Okay. Right. Especially at that age.
They have to.
I want to talk about another thing here about seniors. I run across this every year. I can't believe we make the same mistake. The United States ERISA code clearly says we got to take that money out at 70 and a half. There's a minimum required amount.
RMD.
Right. I don't know how we blow by this as seniors. Every year we have people in trouble, right? Because and it's 50% penalty, so it's nothing small to look at.
No.
But I also have people that don't need their RMDs. Can you talk a little about, all right, here's the warning for you people. You got to take it out at 70 and a half. All you're qualified. You got to take the minimum. But here's all those people saying, why am I taking this out? I don't really need it. I'm just paying taxes for nothing.
That's true. That's true. And you're exactly right. And you put it in words that is very simple. They have to take it out. And here's the thing is when we have clients that call and says, they got a letter from us in the mail that says, you're now 70 and a half, or you're approaching, you've got to take out X amount of dollars, 3.65% at 70 and a half. And they say, why? And they're mad about it. Some clients are very upset about it. And they said, we've never had to do this before. And I've asked, well, have you been 70 and a half before?
No. That's right. That's right.
Right. So it isn't the option of, as you mentioned, wanting to take it out. They must. And if they don't, the IRS will penalize them 50% of the portion that should have been taken out. What should they do with those monies if they don't need that in their bank account? We do meet with clients in their 80s and 85 or even older where they have a lot of cash, right? And they're coming to us with a large bank account or savings account. And we say, well, how did this happen? It's because we're forced to take this money out of our qualified accounts, our IRAs. Recently, we had a client that says, well, we're going to take the money out, we can turn it right back around and reinvest it. And that is what should happen, Steve. That's what should happen if they don't need that extra cash, if you would. They should reinvest that RMD.
Now, I noticed that the code changed about 8 years ago that allows clients to forward under this qualified, I think it's qualified longevity annuity contract.
Yeah, QLAC.
They can shove this all the way out to 85 if they don't need it.
Yeah, they can. And that's very... You don't hear about it much.
No.
We do talk about it. We educate our clients on it, right? Taking some of that qualified money and deferring to age 85, called a QLAC, Qualified Longevity Annuity Contract. They can do that. We've done a lot of that in terms of RMD planning. We are constantly giving our clients guides, if you will, because one thing we didn't mention is that RMD is going to grow at age 70 and a half to 3.65% all the way up to age 101. And they will extend that, right, Steve? Because people
So far, we're at 105. So,
there you go. So it's challenging, but they must take out more and more and more. Pay me now or pay me later.
Well, we have to be aware of these things. That's how you retire right. Listen, don't forget to watch our next segment on the longevity impact on retirement, part 4 in our series on retiring right. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any of the ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or your financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savants Money, the name of the game.